Thank you, Aldo, and welcome to everybody else. Before I begin talking about PowerPoint and posters, I'd like to give a little bit of introduction to myself and my background. As Aldo pointed out, I'm a chartered librarian, and I have been a librarian since the mid-1980s. And I obtained my PGCE as a teacher in 2010. So I'm committed to lifelong learning, really. And I enjoy working in academia. I've been involved with digital technology since the mid-1990s, and I actually remember the internet pre the World Wide Web days. I've worked in the UK and I've worked overseas in Papua New Guinea and Namibia at tertiary institutions in those countries. My current role is I am the Learning Centre Lead and e-learning facilitator at Cornwall College, Newquay, which is a very long title for a job that basically involves me being the go-to person for all digital tech, digital literacy within the college at this particular campus. So I hope that gives you a sort of flavour of where I'm coming from and how long I've been involved in the digital tech. So with no more review, let's move on to today's presentation, which is all about using PowerPoint to design effective posters. And it's really worth, I hope, 1,000 words today. You might be wondering why I'm recommending PowerPoint to develop a print poster. The idea is that many people know how to use PowerPoint. It's ubiquitous piece of software, and it's cheaper and easier to learn than Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, and other professional applications that are very expensive. And although today's presentation is based on PowerPoint and the Microsoft School of Applications, I know that similar applications are available for Google Schools and Mac users that are also free. So while some of the specifics, PowerPoint tips and PowerPoint ways of doing things might not apply, hopefully the overview and the general way to create a poster using a presentation tool will apply to those users as well. So PowerPoint, because it's there. So what are the elements of an effective poster? A poster is all about the visual. It's visual communication. You hopefully have posters in your classroom, and they're all about providing messages and use a visual design that hopefully is pleasing to the eye and logical to the mind. Text should be sparing in any good poster. And to prove it, here's a good design example. The purpose of this picture is education. It's a warming warning. See, there's a clear message, there's a simple design. The picture, the melting ice cone globe, grabs the attention and is obviously the Earth. And it's a bit worrying when it's melting like that. The background, the infinity of space, doesn't distract from the image. It's a very simple design and it's a very clear message. All the way through this presentation, I provided links to the original location of the resource. Good librarian here, I'm quoting my sources. And you're welcome to follow these back when you watch the video again, or you can screenshot the page and look at the links later. But I'm going to stay focused in on using PowerPoint to help you develop posters, hopefully as good and as clear as this one. Obviously, when you have a good design example, you need to have a poor design example so you can see what we're not aiming for. This poster is hopefully there to inform people, but the text boxes and layout, they're inconsistent. They're not using the same color. In fact, color overall is a very ineffective part of this presentation. It's just a little bit in the corner. And when your keyword prescriptions is spelt incorrectly, you're going to worry about the rest of the information this poster is providing. So the spelling wasn't checked. So both of these posters could have been produced within PowerPoint quite effectively. But before you create a poster, it's the usual adage, planning helps before jumping in. Don't just fire up PowerPoint and start drawing boxes and typing in text and adding images. You need to know what your poster's about. How big is the poster going to be? Are you A3, A1, A0? For a very big poster, is it all the information going to be on a single slide, or are you going to have different pages of different sizes and make a multi-panel layout on some sort of bigger backdrop? And is there a deadline? If your poster is about a national, international, or even a school event, you obviously want it up in good time to promote the event and not the day before. So those are the elements of planning. Also on planning, you want to focus on the message of your poster. You need to keep it simple. Does your poster divide into relevant headings? A poster on the topic of grammar might have sections on nouns, verbs, adverbs, adjectives, and other elements that make up the grammar. You might have a poster emphasizing the grammar and punctuation. That's not so simple. That's really two posters, one on grammar, one on punctuation. The headings that you come up with will help determine the content, and you should use a column format to guide the reader through your text. Think of a good newspaper, how it has the information laid out in columns that helps guide you to read the heading and then see the picture, and then you've got the body of the article below. And you can use the same techniques when you're creating your poster. The layout of the poster is important. You want to have a visual grammar that guides the readers from the start point through the rest of the poster so that they know where they're going. If you've got multiple panels, labeling each panel 1, 2, 3, so forth will help guide the readers as to where they start and where they go next. Try and have that as a logical flow. Don't jump people all over the place. They don't like it and they will not look at your poster properly. Use white space. You don't have to fill a poster up and have every space crammed with information. Less is more. Your headings are important because they'll highlight the major points and they'll give the readers a context and hopefully make it clear what's happening in the poster. Images. Posters are visual communication tools, so the images should dominate the poster layout. You need to, when you're using images, if you're using other people's images as particularly, you need to consider the copyright. Are you allowed to use them? And if you are allowed to use them, acknowledge who owns them. Text. Don't have too much text. Be sparing in your use of text and avoid large blocks of text. The recommendation I've given here is no more than 15 lines of continuous text in the body of your poster. And that's because people won't read it. It needs to be readable. And the longer it gets, the less they're going to read it. So try and keep that down to at least 15 lines. And that's, if you think of 15 lines in a column, you might not have more than 3 or 4 words in each line. Colors. The colors of a poster are really, really important. They should be aiming to improve readability, not take away from the message of the poster, its layout or whatever. And you want to limit the color usage that you've got in there. When you're editing your poster, as you're working through it, be ruthless in pruning your text. You want to have the text should be the message and the message only. Make sure that any images you've included are relevant. And when you're looking at the font size, 1 meter is a minimum distance that you want it to be readable from. So make sure that it's readable while people are coming up to the poster. And my last piece of advice here is save often, because you don't want to have what happened to me and have your computer crash and all your work lost and you haven't saved anything. So here's an example which hopefully builds on all of those planning elements. We've got a clear title. The road itself is the path that leads us through our message. It's a simple message. We've got short bits of text and repeated images that help guide us through reading that bits of text. And the use of the stop, look, listen, and think boxes matching each other help it to guide us through the things that we're trying to get across here. Possibly centering the text was a mistake. The find the safe place to cross. Those other bits of text are all centered, and perhaps that detracts and makes it harder to read. But it's a simple message, clearly executed, and a very clean design. So I've talked a lot about planning for posters, and I've given you some examples, but how do you use PowerPoint for it? Well, PowerPoint is originally designed for screen-based presentations, but you can use it for print presentations, and this is where we're going to talk about specifics of this software. I suggest you start with a blank slide. Although you can use the content placeholders if you like, a blank slide will give you more freedom in inputting your text boxes and images and other elements into your slide design. And you do that by going to the Home tab on the ribbon, choosing the New Slide drop down, and then blank from the list of slides shown. The ribbon contains, in modern versions of PowerPoint, contains all the commands necessary to interact with the program and avoid having things hidden away under menu choices. So you have your blank slide. Because PowerPoint is considered as a screen presentation tool, you need to then specify the size and orientation of the slide. You'll find this information on the Design tab. The tab that you need to select is underlined. You'll find on that tab, you'll see an option for slide size. Clicking that will give you an option for page setup, and down the bottom, you'll find a custom option, which will set you to up to 54 centimeters in either direction, which is a huge piece of work. And here we've got something that's set up to be 27 centimeters by 19 centimeters, which is a big poster indeed. Which is why that my next piece of advice is that when you're working on your poster, you want to use zoom. You want to see the whole design, sometimes like stepping back and see the whole design, but when you're working on laying things out, you need to use zoom so that you can zoom into different areas of the slide quite closely. And this is one of the features that PowerPoint's added that allows you to use it as a very basic graphics program, similar to the work that you get in PowerPoint, Photoshop. So, as you start to add your text and your images and your shapes onto the slide layout, you don't have to worry about dragging and dropping them into the right place, because PowerPoint will give you the option to select multiple slides, multiple elements on the slide, and then align them. And you can align them to the left, to the center of everything, to their rights. So you have a lot of ways to align your material or even distribute your material out to make it have symmetry and look good in the layout. So you can align it to the, if you only select one object, you can choose to align it to the slide's own elements. But if you select multiple objects, then you will align to the first object that you selected. So you can set the position of your first object and then have your text and everything else line up by selecting the rest of them that you want. To select multiple objects, you select the first one and then you can hold down the Shift key and everything you click after that will add to the selection. Or you can hold down the Control key and select discontiguous elements. Shift allows you to select contiguous elements, which means elements that are next to each other. And on PowerPoint, it doesn't really matter whether you select Shift or Control. But just remember to save frequently. So, if you want to have an effective poster, you're going to have to make sure that you follow some design rules. And I've given a few design rules, and there's obviously many more that can be read in. You want to avoid full sentences. Just use phrases. It keeps things simple. And to add our 1 meter rule, you want to be aiming for 24 points for body text and 36 points for heading texts. As your images are going to be the focal point of your poster, you want to make sure that they're clear. If you're using graphs or other elements to display statistics or numeric information, captioning them will help make them more useful. Images should be captioned if it'll help the clarity of your poster, and that's really something you have to decide as you develop. PowerPoint shapes can be used to help guide the readers through the poster, or you can use them to highlight content by creating a frame or a box to your images or text and draw attention to different elements of the poster. Research has shown that if you have a dark background and light text, you're in fact interfering with people's ability to read the information, which is why I recommend a light color background and dark color letters. You want to make it as easy as possible for them to read. Color can also be used as a navigation aid so that you could have your layout numbers or ABCs in a particular color to make it obvious that it's a navigation throughout the poster. And here's an example of that. We have a heading and we have some text. The image screams out and it's all about the girl and her adored cat. But the actual text tells us that she receives a lot of benefits from this companionship as much as we'd assume that the cat would. So working with images there, we move on now to looking at working with text. There's 3 ways to enter text in PowerPoint, and the 3 versions are given here. Text boxes have become so important that you'll even find them on the Home tab now. A text box, you simply select the option text box and then you can click and start typing, and that will type until you hit enter to wrap the text, or you can click and drag to specify the width of the box that the text will be held in. Resizing handles are available to help you resize the elements of a box. Using any of the corner handles will help maintain the size and relationship of the text as you make a box smaller or larger. It'll also have the same effect on an image. It keeps the proportions together. If you do it from the middle areas, you could mess up the proportions, something rotten. When a box is selected, a green circle will also be above the middle handle, and selecting and rotating on that. Selecting on that will help you rotate the box to an angle. And you can also always use the pane to help. You can use the pane, the format pane, to actually type in numbers and specify rather than just dragging and hoping you get it right. Since Office 2007, 2008 on a Mac, you've actually been able to insert dummy text into text boxes in PowerPoint. If you type equals rand and then the two brackets, that'll enter the phrase, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. And as it shows here, you can add numbers to control the number of times that's repeated. The example on this slide, I've had two, 1. So you've got two paragraphs of 1 line each. And the lorem equivalent gives you the dummy Latin text. And it's really useful to help you see the poster's layout before you've actually found the content that you want to put in there. And here's a poster example of a chemistry poster that uses the Latin dummy text to help lay out the size for the headings and the body elements, which are contained in separate text boxes, and lets you see how it works before you've actually gone to the effect of finding the text for that element. And it's a good idea with PowerPoint that you can create this template poster with the dummy text built in, and then simply replace the dummy text to discover, in this case, different information about chemistry topics, using the same layout each time, but simply changing the content of the text boxes. Images. Images are obviously the key element, as I've said, of any visual communications poster. There's two ways to get to images. Again, showing their importance in working within stuff in PowerPoint. You can add the images in from either the Home tab or the Insert tab. There's 3 options that'll come up, and I usually use the first one, which is Insert from File. That'll let you navigate your folders to find pictures on your own computer. There's an online option if you wish to find images available through Bing search. Whichever method you choose, as soon as you click the Insert button on your selected picture, it'll be placed into the PowerPoint slide. And selecting that picture on the slide, at which point resize handles will appear, will provide access to the Picture Format tab. The Picture Format tab is found at the very end of the tabs. It's a tab that only appears when a picture is selected, so it's context sensitive. It has a lot of information and a lot of features that you used to only find in the drawing programs like Photoshop and the like. You can remove the background, select elements of the poster that won't appear, elements of the image that won't appear in your final poster. You can change the picture to another picture if you need to. You can use the corrections to change the color balance and the sharpness of the picture. You can add in basic artistic effects such as pixelating or black and white. You can even set the transparency of the poster so that it might show the text through it by becoming fainter than the main poster. Quick Styles gives you access to the basic formatting for a poster. So you might have a picture selected, and the quick style would be that you wanted a circle drawn over some elements of the poster, and everything outside the circle becomes faint and less visible. There's a whole bunch of quick styles available. Alt text isn't really applicable here because that's more for web pages and the such like, for people who are trying to read it that way. You can align the picture, bringing it forward in the image or sending it behind other elements of the picture. And you can reorder multiple objects on the slide to bring them in front or behind other key elements. You have the ability to line things left and right and up and down and all those other things. You can crop the picture to only focus on the elements that you want, or even resize it. You can format the picture, format the pane to give up all of these elements again with numeric alternatives. I'm not going to mention animator's background as that's not really relevant to a static poster. I'm covering a lot of information here, and I hope I'm not speaking too fast. But the picture tools format tab gives you a lot of power to work with images, and it's really worth exploring and finding out all the elements that it has available. And this has grown in complexity as the program has developed. A lot of the elements were in fact once only available in programs like Photoshop and Illustrator, so it's amazing what's been managed to be done here. I wanted to talk here a little bit about one thing that you could do that really makes a poster stand out and gives it that wham factor, and that's filling text with an image. So you start with the text by inserting a text box, and I recommend that you choose a thick font like Arial Black because you want a nice big wide font so you can see that the picture is visible there. Having done that, you'd select the box, the text box, and shape format will appear on a context sensitive toolbar in the ribbon. Selecting that toolbar will show you a text fill option, and along with gradients, textures, and basic color changes, there's also a picture option. And the picture option gives you options to add a picture in from a folder or an online browser, the same as inserting a normal picture. But you can then stylize its offset and move the picture around in relation to the text, or you can even set its transparency in relation to the text. And it gives a really effective wham factor, as you'll see in this next slide, where a simple poster has been really enlivened by making the Go green leaf background. And it really makes this poster stand out and gives it that extra impact. And it's a very simple poster, and that's a very, very simple technique for PowerPoint. Shapes. I've mentioned a lot about shapes. There's two ways to work with shapes, access shapes in PowerPoint. And shapes help to give your presentation, give your poster a visual aid, a link. They help to frame elements. You can use rectangles to frame images or blocks of text. You can use the call outs if you have voices, faces in there to do speech bubbles and such like. You have a lot of elements, arrows to draw attentions. This has grown again in complexity and the choice that's offered, and all of these images are resizable and formatable to either have no fill or a basic fill or a picture fill or a texture fill. So there's a lot you can do with all of these shapes. And remember, PowerPoint considers your text box, your shapes, and your images as shapes to be edited and worked with. So, tips and tricks for effective posters. You want to be careful that you're not overloading your poster with too much text or too many images. Remember the 1 meter rule with your text and look for a balance there. Between the text and the images, look for symmetry. Draw imaginary lines or use the guides of PowerPoints to create horizontal and vertical lines, and use the line shape to create diagonal lines, and use those guides to help line up your text boxes and images together so that you have a symmetrical looking shape to the overall focus of the poster, which will make it stand out more and make it more effective. Remember, you don't want to crowd the poster with all the information that you have about a topic. Pick out the key points. Less is more. When you're using shapes, be consistent. Once you've got a shape you're happy with, you're better off to copy and paste it. That'll mean that you're getting the same shape again and again. And you can use another shape, or you can transform that shape and place it in a different orientation to differentiate an element of the poster. And with color, it's useful to learn basic color theory, because too many colors, particularly in the text, can in fact impinge on the message of your poster. You need to find a good color wheel, and I'm recommending Peloton at peloton.com. This lets you select a color, and then it'll give you colors that are analogous or complementary, or other variants of color theory, such as 4 colors that work well together, or a tetrad or triad of colors. And once you've selected your color, your base color, and seen other colors that work with it, it lets you bring up examples of a web page, admittedly, but that uses that color, so you can see how it looks in terms of being the text and the background and the other elements that go to make up the slide and poster. So you'll tell how it works together. You can do this as a positive format or as a negative format, so it reverses all the colors. You can even apply various visual simulations to the outcome, so you can see what the poster will look like to somebody who's red-green colorblind and decide whether those colors are going to work. The amount of features that Peloton has is quite awesome. And here's a poster example again. This poster uses a reasonable range of colors. The big message is highlighted in orange to draw attention to it. The use of shapes for the 3 arrows instead of bullet points to bring across the points, and the stylized and obvious cows, sheep, and pig images, and the trees and tractor help to format and lay out what the poster is about. And this, and the thumbs up inside another shape to give itself some emphasis. This health and safety poster gets its message across very simply. Posters, I've sort of suggested throughout this presentation that posters could be produced by yourselves to decorate your classroom and provide information about the classroom. Perhaps something, if you're teaching English, as grammar, or a maths poster on various elements of mathematics, or a history topic. And these are posters you present yourself. Once you get better at it, you could make posters a group assignment, because children like to feel creative, and it's a really good way to get the students working together and get some interesting posters for the classroom and give the students ownership of it. What they'll find is that they need, because a poster includes the headings and the highlights, they'll need to investigate the topic quite thoroughly and deeply to know what to extract to have in the poster. So it helps with the cooperative learning elements. They're learning together. It's a really good way to get the group and the classes working together and have some sort of poster day where all the posters get shown on the walls of the classroom, and they can all go around and assess each other's work, so they become involved and in your assessment, which I think could be good. They could help you grade other people's posters, and they'll learn something about the difficulties of presenting the information in a clear, focused way. So that's posted as a group assignment. I've given here some rubrics, some basic rubrics that if you decide to use posters as an assignment, they will help you get some ideas of how it can be graded. And sharing these rubrics with the class will help them work towards the expectations to get as good a grade as possible. And I've also shared some poster templates because I've covered a lot of information here in a fairly short space of time. And you might be feeling, oh God, where do I go now? And you don't want to start with a blank slide. And any of these links will take you to sites that will have some different template layouts for different posters that will help you get started with all the content and material laid in, and you just replace the images and text with your own images and text to make your poster. And as you get more confident in working with laying things out in PowerPoint and looking at how they've laid out these poster templates, you might decide to go with a blank slide and lay your own poster out. And finally, you may remember earlier our prescriptions poster, and here's the same poster given a bit of work and layout to make it a much more effective poster. All the text that was on the previous poster is on this poster. It's obvious prescriptions is now clear to read. It's about the medications that are available. The text below has been divided into a column layout, which makes it easier to read and focus in on the different elements. And the use of different layers here has helped to make everything stand out and a much more readable resource than it was in our poor design example earlier on. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm ready to take any questions if anybody has any questions.
I have one specific question, if you wouldn't mind, David. One is if you see any difference between a print poster and basically a digital visual. So, and by digital visual, I mean something that you would post on social media or Facebook, also to convey a certain message. And if so, would you then use other tools, or would you have any recommendations? Um, for those types of visuals?
Okay, well, maybe the layouts and the planning process is the same, but for a digital format, the size and resolution of images will be different. I believe the web is 72 dots per inch. To make an effective image work in a print environment, you want to be at least 150 dots per inch. So you need to remember that a lot of the images you get from the web will be a low resolution, and if you're scaling it up to an A0 size printout, which you won't often do on the web, you're going to get a lot of pixelation in the image. But in terms of using PowerPoint to create a digital image for presenting on Facebook or things, the same principles apply, and you can do the same techniques. And so no, there is no difference really, apart from the image resolution.
Image resolution. That's very helpful, and thank you also for being so precise. And then the other question I had, just to verify that you're not working for Microsoft or for PowerPoint, because we're now specifically talking about PowerPoint. Can you think of any other tools, or did you try in the past maybe any other tools to make posters with?
Well, yes, I've used Keynote because I'm a Mac user. So I've used Keynote on the Mac, and you can do much of the same things within Keynote. And although I haven't tried Google Slides, I'm thinking it's a presentation program and will give you many of the same elements. And Adobe have released a free set of programs under the Adobe Spark heading that one of which is Spark Post, that is specifically aimed at producing posters, and it's free to use for education. So if you don't have access to Microsoft's products, there is a variety of products around, and Spark, Adobe Spark, is a particularly nice one to try. It's free, but you have all the knowledge that Adobe have had in developing programs like Photoshop synthesized down into quite a simple program that's focused purely on producing a poster.
Those are marvelous recommendations. Thank you so much, David, for sharing all of this with us. If there are no further questions or ideas, then a very big thank you to all of you. And I look forward to having you attend the next session of our digital skills platform.
I'd like to thank you all for listening today.